All we have to do is
The work doesn't sound.
That's Larry.
they can re-go with.
Smith, that's his last name, Johnson's brother.
They don't need something.
Maybe, no, I think he takes it with him.
Yes.
So the gun says,
Your dad. No,
well, anyway, I'll go by my to me, as far as I'm concerned.
6 o'clock, call this meeting to order. There will be no pledge and there will be no.
It's all discussion.
It's all discussion. We have a quorum. So the first, second item on the agenda is discuss ways to utilize our wonderful empty buildings, either repair or fundraising. Now this sort of dovetails into the building restoration area because they are presently doing the outside of the buildings, okay? This is associated with what we want to do with the inside of the buildings to make them viable to either a business coming in, or we're running the business, or some other avenue that we can take these buildings in a direction. The beautiful example is right next door. We had a wonderful place over here that was a restaurant for many years, off and on. It is in dire need of a lot of inside restoration. So beyond that, let me go to these gentlemen, see if they have any ideas on the subject of our buildings. And we have a list of them. We're talking about Seminole Hall, the Firehouse, Dickman Hall, the Commissary, and the Post Theater. Now the reason the Post Theater is in there is because we can use it beyond the point that it is presently used for. Gentlemen, whoever wants to jump in first, is there anything you want to add to this?
Well, you said about uses of the building. I haven't got anything figured out, but the first thing that comes to mind is the Post Theater. How come we don't show movies for kids or movies for people at the Post Theater on a regular basis and entertain everybody here and generate revenue? There's not a movie theater between here and Uvalde and Del Rio.
That's a good point, Roby, and I guess the first thing you have to do is check on how much it would cost to bring that booth up to standards, for safety standards for today, and what type of equipment we need in there. And I have no idea what type of projector system they use nowadays. I know what the old ones look like, but I don't know what the new ones look like. So, are you saying maybe we should see if we can get a hold of a company to let them know how much it would cost to bring that? I think they call it a movie booth or projection booth up to standards.
Yeah, I'd say we should check on what it would take to show movies, what interest.
Is there a projector in the thing now?
No, there's nothing up there now. It was old.
Used it in the past. What happened to the equipment?
I don't know what they did with the old equipment. It was the old wide.
One of the problems before was they did have movies, and they had, I guess, a volunteer director or projectionist, but nobody came. So
I don't know what the schedule was in the past for movies and stuff like this. My suggestion, if we're going to have movies for kids, that we don't try to do it every week or anything, but make special occasions out of it so that you can advertise and get a crowd there. And you know, I don't know what you would charge for movies for kids or whatever, but before we actually open it up and do a projection like that, we should look at how much revenue would be possible to bring it in for that, and how much. I mean, you can't show today's movies in the theater for nothing. They're going to charge you for it, so you'd have to look and see how much money you would have to charge for the kids to come see a movie, and how much more you'd have to charge so that you make a little bit of profit. I mean, this is not just snap your finger and it's going to happen. But I think it's a worthwhile project to look into to see how much revenue we could do with that.
Okay, that's good. One question, about 5 minutes, okay? Has anybody got a suggestion in the audience how to address this idea to make it viable? I don't want to go crazy with it, I just wanted to have, anybody got a suggestion? Yes, sir?
I don't know who furnished it or whatever, but they had just, I think last summer, right down here at the amphitheater, they did an outdoor theater thing. Who did that and where was that equipment?
Rio Grande Electric.
Okay. Anybody know?
It was Frontier Christmas.
Was it?
Mhm.
But didn't the projector belong to Rio Grande
Yes,
Electric?
it did. And they have found, I'm on that committee, that the cost of the movies is prohibitive. Unless you get one of the domain movies that's free to everyone.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to Seminole Hall and ask the same kind of questions, but first let me say something in relationship to that, because I'm familiar with all these buildings, because I'm on the other committee for restoration. That building, as you know, we use during 4 o'clock days, our festival. And it is lacking in a lot of areas that we could use more successfully if we brought something else in. For example, we have a whole second floor that nobody really sees because it's blocked off all the time. What it originally was nurses' barracks years back. And there used to be a full bath up there. There is a bar up there, and the water and all of that associated with it is not attached anymore. There's very limited electricity in the whole building. There was a bid idea years ago that was presented with a group that we no longer have here, that was giving ideas to the board about how to use the buildings and all the other places around here. And it involved putting bathrooms on the first floor, and as you go into the building on your right-hand side, there is a concrete platform. That immediately goes down to the cellar, which is where all of the original showers, blah, blah, went on when the soldiers were here. Having said that, there is potential to that building to be utilized just the same way we utilize these other 2 buildings that we now have as motels. That is the easiest one to address for something that we want to start a business or a money-making thing that will enhance the fort and bring in revenues. Gentlemen? Young man over the end.
When I first come aboard the fort, they was talking about that it could be used for an elder hostel, such as groups that are on birding tours and stuff like that. A good example is the group that we just had, the car group that we just had come in, and they just came in for a couple hours. If we could make it into a unit that would house a large number of people at a reasonable cost, you could get car groups and birding groups in here, and maybe charging for tours for guides to take them on the trails and stuff like that. Other than that, you could turn it into motels with suites that are bigger than the rooms that we have now, and would house 4 or 5 people, and make it into wedding suites or stuff like that. We have weddings over here at the garden over here, but we don't have any special suites for honeymoon suites or anything like this. You'd have to, these are all great ideas, but we have to find out how much it would cost to get the plumbing brought up to standards, get the electricity brought up to standards, make sure that the fire code standards are met and stuff like this. So you shoot these ideas out, and then we got to do research on your electricity, your plumbing, and your fire code standards. We definitely need to use Seminole Hall. Using it once a year for the festival really doesn't pay the taxes on it for that building. So these are ideas that I'm throwing out, but the research as far as how it's to be done, you need to have an architecture come in and look at it to make the best possible use for the rooms. You would probably want to go simple versus extensive, fancy, make it look country rough, like the outside of the building. That's my ideas. But first we need to look at how much it costs to do the electricity, plumbing, and fire standards.
Thank you. Once again, I'll pose the same question out to the audience. Has anybody got any other ideas? Debbie?
Well, I thought at one time we had talked about using it for like church groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
Right.
like a barracks, back to a barracks type thing. You've got your cots with the trunks at the end for the clothing and stuff like that. Or even hunters, groups of hunters could come in and rent sections of it or something, just put cots. Rather
Sure.
than drive to Del Rio back to here or something.
True, but we're still faced with the same problem. We have to take and do the infrastructure inside, get the plumbing back, the electricity back, and all that. Yes, that's a good idea.
At one time on the planning committee, we talked about it becoming a convention center.
Yes.
But since, too, we don't have anything for rental for weddings that we used to have for the reception hall, it could be used for that, dancing and all that, because the one side is hardwood.
All good ideas. One of the things that is on here that I did mention when I read off this number 2 things is fundraising. You know, if we come to something of a decision or an agreement, is a better word, on any of these buildings, and I think what we seriously have to look at is how we're going to fund it. And fundraising comes to the top of the list. And it has to be something that everybody is on the same page. So we're looking in the same direction, that we want to enhance the Ford and bring more people in. It's the same way, it'll offer something else. It'll be more tours that we can get like we used to have years ago where the buses came here, you know, and we can offer them a little bit more. Jody's working on that to get the restaurant open up at the golf course. You know, we need all of these little pieces to come together to form the big puzzle that we're trying to present to the public so that we enhance this place and we increase our revenue and our population. All right, thank you very much on that. The firehouse is the next one. As you know, we had given that over to the group across the street on the rescue, and they're not using it anymore. So it's sitting idle. It does need a number of repairs, but it's not in dire straits as many of the buildings we have. Of course, it's much smaller. Okay, so the amount of repairs come down to the fact that we have a little roof stuff that needs to be done, and a lot of minor outside things like windows and blah blah that are out, and then the plumbing needs to be brought up to standards, and there is a back section to it and 2 big bays. Now, how are we going to use this one is another question. I know that Jody had an idea, and I don't know whatever happened to it, but it's one of those things that, you know, may come up to the surface again. And have you gentlemen got any ideas on it?
Is it basically just an empty building right now?
Right now, it's an empty building to a certain
More of a
degree.
garage,
To a certain degree. I'm spinning a head shake over here.
You were there.
It's definitely an empty building. It's a big building. It's actually bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside. You have the same problem, you have a bigger problem with this one than you do with Seminole Hall and stuff, because the first thing you'd have to do before we think about doing anything is a brand new roof. It's pretty obvious when you go into the building that the roof has major leaks. It's a flat roof. There's no repair of those type. It would have to be replaced. The outside work could be done hopefully by the Historic and Preservation Committee, and the roof. The electric and the plumbing would have, and bathrooms and stuff would have to be brought up to standards. At one time there was a kitchen in there, and depending on what you want to use it for, you could put that back into working order. You could use it as a pizza house, firehouse pizza, and serve pizzas. Open the doors up when it's not too hot out, and have like an open area for eating pizzas. You could turn it into a florist, art gallery type thing. You could turn it into a wine tasting, cheese tasting, coffee house type thing. You don't want to try to turn it into a restaurant, but you want to turn it into something where you can make money. As far as utilizing it for anything else, I'm about run out of ideas on that.
Thank you. I'll also present the same question. Has anybody got an idea of
Have you
Yes.
considered it for lodging?
not too good.
Not good?
No, it wouldn't. It
It's
wouldn't.
only got like 1 apartment.
It's got 1 apartment in there.
That's it.
The roofs are really high because of the fire engines and stuff.
Well, I just know in your experience, they turned a lot of things into really unique lodging.
Well, you could
And
turn.
people just ate them up. They were full all the time.
You could turn those
It had the
in.
old firehouse, and it had 2, things in it where you could rent it out. You might find that people would like the historic appeal of that rather than a motel.
That-
Be willing to pay for it.
Well, at least it has a garage.
I'm not saying it couldn't be turned into a lodge. What I am saying is to do that and to
I
do
don't
it
mean a lodge, I mean lodging.
lodging.
Right,
To
right.
turn it into lodging, you could probably at the most get 2 good suites out of it. But to make it where it's appealing and stuff like this, you would have to definitely put a lot of money in it.
And has anybody looked into grants? It's a historical building, isn't it?
Well, that's something we're going to have to address down
That's
the
another
road.
revenue.
I mean,
Lee, I know in the past we had the planning committee, which I guess we no longer have, but why can't we put a group together appointed by the board to look into other uses for these buildings?
Thank you, dear. Something I want to do. Hasn't got there yet. All right. Now for the, yeah,
Dickman Hall.
the big question, Dickman Hall. Needless to say, there is a tremendous amount of work needed in Dickman Hall. It's not as insurmountable as people have painted the picture in the past. In other words, I mean, it's not the same kind of dollar signs that people have painted in the past. Yes, there's a lot of work. Yes, it's going to cost money. But not the kind of money that people have projected, because the thing can be done in phases. And every time you do a thing in phases, it does reduce the cost at the present time and spreads it out over a amount of time. Now, when I say phases, for example, if we were going to bring it about so that we just had a restaurant, we'd do the first floor. We wouldn't bother with the second floor. And that would cut it down a lot. And it needs a lot of work. Have you seen the inside? Have you seen it?
Oh, yes.
And you know you have.
And I have.
And what are your opinions, John?
It's a train wreck.
Well, it's almost a train wreck. Yes, I agree.
My opinion, I originally, when I made a motion, I think it was about a year ago, to open up Dickman Hall and turn it into a restaurant. I went in and walked through the building, took a lot of notes, figured up how much it would cost to paint and stuff like this, and that's not looking at the restaurant equipment. You know, I know there's a lot of old equipment down there in the basement of Dickman Hall that the stoves, you know, they don't make stoves like that anymore, and if you could get the parts to restore them, you'd have a better stove, restaurant stove, than you would with the newer ones. And the reason I can state this was because they had the same stoves up at Garner State Park, and they got the newer versions of them, and they weren't near as well. But that being said, my estimate of restoring the building and making sure that it meets all the plumbing codes of the day and the electrical codes of the day, I'm going to go mildly on the low end. It's going to cost $300,000. Now, you may disagree with me, but looking at the building and bringing it up to sound conditions, and that's talking about opening up the bar. That's talking about the whole shamil, totally. You do it in a phase, and you won't be laying out that kind of money at each phase. On the high end, I would say it's going to be about $300,000 to $500,000. That's my estimate. I'm not an expert. I've been around. Buildings have been restored and stuff like that when I was in Helena and got involved in projects. And it seems like that you look at a building and you start into it, and you always wind up costing you more money than you thought. It's kind of like when you go in and remodel a house and you tear out a room and you figure it's going to be $5,000 and it winds up costing $7,000. I don't know whether that would happen with Dickman Hall, but I'm just saying you start out low and you set a high end, and then you do it in phases. I would love, personally, I know that most of the people in this fort would love to see that as a restaurant. I personally would like to see it as a restaurant. I think it would benefit a motel, it would benefit any of these Seminole Hall and farmhouses that we want to put back in and put them back in shape so they can bring in revenue. And it should be a community project. We can have fundraisers, and we can hopefully we can write grants and stuff like this. But it should be about a 5-year project, and hopefully after a year and a half you can get one part of it open so you can start bringing in some revenue. That's my comment on the building. I'd love to see it back into a restaurant, but it's going to take a community project.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Judy?
I know from conversations around the fort over the last 5 or 6 years, Dickman Hall is the one building that more residents are interested in seeing opened again, and probably the building for which you can get the most volunteer help, both in actual physical labor and fundraising efforts to bring it back. I think the phasing it floor by floor is probably the only practical way. I certainly think that we can get volunteers to go in and begin the cleaning that needs to be done and sorting to find out what's savable, what's not. You know, stripping the building down to what is worth keeping and not worth keeping gives you a better idea, long range, of what it's gonna cost to put it back together. Right now, people have gone in, taken this, taken that, moved this, moved that. I've been in there, community council did a sort of down and dirty inventory of the first the two top floors, we didn't get down into the underneath a year ago. There's a box of silverware on the first floor. There's a box of silverware on the second floor. There's pieces of things that have been moved all over. All of that material by volunteer labor should be put back where it belongs, and then you can assess what you really need. And Garland, I totally agree with you. Old restaurant furnace, stoves, ranges will serve us way better than new equipment.
When it came up a year or so ago, and Garland was asked a question by me, how much money did the restaurant make the 10 years that it operated the last time?
The last year,
You didn't know.
I did know, and
I do know.
And it's been the last year, the gross income on the restaurants was in the range of over $300,000 a year.
No, the restaurant lost money all 10 years.
That's what I'm saying. I got the paperwork at home that I can show you the gross income.
I got that from the operator, Neil and
I'm
Barbara
not-
Simmons, Randy.
Let me finish. All I'm saying is that the gross income for that restaurant was over $360,000 a year. Now, I looked at and I went all the way back 7 years, and I got the paperwork at home in my files.
I do too.
And you look at it, and I went to people that I know that run restaurants and talked to them. And every time I talked to somebody and showed them my figures, the figures that were given to me out of the accounting office, the first things out of their mouth was bad management, money walking out the door, food walking out the door, and that's the reason it lost money. It wasn't because it didn't gross money, it just wasn't managed right. You look at the electricity for the years that I got, the electricity costs basically stayed the same. You had your water and stuff like that, your bills that you consider bills, basically stayed the same. They lost money because it's my understanding from talking to people on the Ford here that that restaurant, when it was being run, was trying to feed basically most of Brackenville.
How much money did the bar make?
The bar made
Please.
$90-some thousand.
Let's not go there.
It lost money.
Let's not go there. That's not what we're about. We're not talking about losses from before or anything like that. We're talking about how we can utilize these buildings. What happened in the past is the past. We cannot change it.
Lee, we can't even get somebody to take over the country club down there.
That
It'd
is
be a nice
neither
level
here nor
restaurant.
now. What we're talking about is these buildings, you know? What happened before, I don't really care about right now. I really care about what we're going forward with and where we are right now and trying to improve our situation. That's what I'm looking at. Never mind what's past. We
You're
can't
beating-
change it. We
You're
can't
beating
change
a
it.
dead horse.
Are we okay on the tax end of this, as, you know, we got into trouble over the hunt? Are we okay, do you rent these things to somebody, or will the Ford actually maintain it and hire a manager?
We're not even there.
We're not even
So
at that stage
why
yet.
even go there? We're not even there.
Oh, okay, well, I just
You know,
wondered if
we
you
don't even
bring a
know what we
business
want to
in.
do. We
Yeah.
don't know if we want to put a lock on the front door or put a board across it so nobody can go in. We haven't got there. Let's get to where we're going. Never mind where we're going to be or where we were. Let's stick on the road that we're on right now,
Okay.
okay?
It seems like a lot of planning if you haven't established the
It's
fact whether you
ideas,
can or
dear.
not.
It's ideas. It's not planning. All right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to get off on a tangent like that, but every once in a while, it strikes me as odd around
I
here
just asked a
that
question, that's
everybody,
all I did.
I understand that, but everybody is always looking at the past, and we should be doing things that we did in the past. Well, we're not in the past. We're in the
Well, that
present.
wasn't the past, Lee, but I do think
No, I
when
know
we
that.
got a $35,000 contract crammed down our throats because we didn't look at the tax end of something, it might have been better if we'd have discussed that before we hired him.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm
Talk
talking
about
about
the
the
hunt.
hunt.
Yeah,
What's that got to do with this?
It's
has-
a business that was on this board and our taxes were raised.
but it
because
has
of
nothing to do, it's the past still. You know?
Okay.
You're belaboring on something that isn't now we're talking about. Please, let's
Okay.
stick to the subject.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm great with it.
Okay.
Do we have the money to do this? Is it a safe building, and can we make it safe, and what will it take? That's what we have to find out.
Did I say we had the money to do this?
I'm asking you
I'm talking about ideas of how to use the building.
ideas of how to use the building.
Right.
But the building's not ready to use yet. How are you going to get it ready?
That's what we're talking about.
I know
Don't
that.
get the horse before the cart, my dear.
I'm anxious. I want to know.
I answered you.
I have ideas.
I answered you. What, you got
Once you get it
ideas?
ready, I've
Fine.
got ideas.
Great. I don't know why it comes to this every time, but it really
The
does.
first thing we got to do is see what buildings are the first that can be fixed with the least amount of money. And then we got to figure out how we could raise that money to put stuff in these buildings.
You know, the words on here simply says discuss. It doesn't say anything more than that.
That's all we're doing is
I
discussing.
thought we were discussing.
Right.
Well, we can't, we're
But
not
you're
in the plan.
projecting things that aren't there yet.
He said $300,000.
No, he put out an arbitrary figure
Okay, I'm curious how he got that figure.
from what he did before.
From what I looked at and when I went around and priced and stuff like that.
We have
You've done this before. You've estimated and built buildings, restored
No.
buildings.
No, I didn't say that,
Okay.
Joe. I didn't
well,
say
I'm
that.
just curious how you come to that number.
I happen to know more than one person outside the port.
Joe, drop it. Please drop it. Okay, now, the down and dirty question that I wanted to ask you about Dickman Hall, which everybody wants to put back as a restaurant, is this big question mark out here. Is anybody, or does everybody, or does anybody think it's wrong that we do a fundraising for this particular project to help it go along? It's only a question.
$500,000.
Not if you don't know what you're gonna do with the building.
Exactly. Or how much it's going to cost. How much funds you got to raise.
The question is, would you like to do a fundraising? The answer will be, we'll find out what the thing is.
If it was $100, yeah, we'll
what?
fundraise.
Oh,
If it's
$100.
$500,000, no.
If it was $100, Joe, I'd give it to
Hey,
you.
well, you know, you ask a question.
Don't be ridiculous.
You have to be careful about spreading yourselves here at the Fort too thin, but yes.
We're not
We're not
talking about spreading
This is
ourselves thin.
discussion.
We're throwing out
I
ideas and
understand
stuff.
that, and we have
And-
fundraising for.
And it looks like we have a few adversaries in here.
Right. I understand that, you know, but I'm just saying, this is something that everybody wants here at the fort, Dickman Hall, and I propose the question, if you're interested that much in it, would you be interested in fundraising? If it supported the project. You know, it's as simple as that. It's as simple yes or no.
It's a restaurant.
Why don't we start with the golf course down there, and if we get
Working
that
on that.
going good, the profits from that, and it should work with the profit.
No.
Then we could apply
No.
that to
No.
Dickman Hall.
No, we're not talking apples and apples on this one. But, you know, the idea is what I asked you. If you don't
That's
want,
an idea.
you don't want to answer the question, don't answer the question.
Okay,
That's
let's
an
move to the
idea.
commissary.
Yes, Norma.
Since community council, via Full Clock Days, the festival, do most of the fundraising, why don't we ask the people who are likely to volunteer at the next community council? That would at least give us some idea of whether those particular volunteers would be interested.
It's an idea. Yes.
The only thing I'm thinking is that, you know, you've talked about, what, 3 or 4 different buildings so
We're-
far?
Yeah,
We got one more to go.
we haven't picked out anything to work
I
on.
understand it, but you threw out the idea of working on 3 or 4 different buildings, which is fine. And it's, you know, it's admirable what you're talking about. But I'm thinking that before you get people into volunteering, fundraisers, et cetera, the planning commission people need to say, okay, what do we want to do with this building? What do we want to do with this one? What do we want to do with this one? Here's the ideas. Okay, 4 o'clock people, here's the ideas for these 3 buildings. Now,
Hold up.
which one do you want to do?
Hold up for a minute. We don't have a planning.
I understand it. But I'm
So
just saying,
we can't go on that avenue right now because we don't have that.
but I realize that, but I don't think you can ask people to do donations, et cetera, without knowing what it's for. That's the only thing.
That's right.
Jody,
That's all I'm saying. You know, if you're gonna make this a restaurant bar, okay, that's definitely gonna be a restaurant bar. Now, you people are willing to do a fundraiser. That's all I'm saying. In other words, you need to know more or less what it is. before you-
and I would have to agree with that statement. All we're doing is throwing out ideas right now.
It's just
We haven't even,
discussion.
we haven't even picked a building out, or nobody's picked a building out. or anything. Go ahead, Joe.
Throwing out numbers though.
So what?
No, we're not, Jody. Jody,
All right, this is, it seems like there's a cycle here that needs to be broken, guys. And I think the reason this has come up on the plate is because we're paying on taxes for buildings that we're not using. And as a new general manager, director of operations, excuse me on that misquote, I've gone into these buildings, and quite frankly, it's disgusting what the condition these buildings are in. Absolutely disgusting. When you go into historical marker building and the way it's been abused, the way it has not been treated, you go into the firehouse. Yes, the firehouse is empty, but it's also full of trash and mold and nastiness of people not even taking care of it. Oil spills, just disgusting things. Dickman Hall, you guys had things walk out of here, you were stolen blind, and it's disgusting there too. The reason for this is to come together as a community. Yes, I know it's all been junk, and there's been anger about all kinds of things, but we have to come together. This is just an idea of planning, not to sit up here and get crucified. Yes, we're throwing out numbers. He threw out a number that was from the old DO. He got it appraised at $300,000 for Dickman Hall. So the thing here is, I would love to have a sign-up sheet, and let's go tour these buildings together as a community, and you see what I see and some other people have been privileged to see. And let's get rejuvenated, okay, yes. Let's get a volunteer group for Seminole Hall. It's probably the easiest building to clean up first. And then let's start, okay, what is it going to cost? Let's get a bid on electricity and water. And then we'll fundraise for there. Then we'll move on to the next thing with that building. Or if we want to get a group together and let's go volunteer, how are we going to get a trash day clean out for the firehouse? That's a step in the right direction. Then we can go back to these planning things of how we're going to fundraise to do this in steps. And let's become proud of our buildings. I know it makes everybody sick to see these things. And when you walk in, I feel passion. And you get rejuvenated of why we're here.
thank you.
That's it.
On Dickman Hall, it's not been used for so long, but we still hold a liquor license.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. We've never put them down.
It's in sleep mode right now, but we still got the
Still
liquor.
under Fort's name.
We got liquor, we got beer, we got wine, yes.
Well, I know you don't have a liquor license at the golf course.
No.
Because it was
No,
always
because
held here.
we didn't transfer it there.
Yeah.
We left it where it
We're
was
not.
in Sleep.
All right, on the commissary.
Okay, there's one building left, and
No.
it's commissary. Now, I'm not gonna ask for a whole lot of stuff on this, I'm just gonna simply say what is wrong with it and leave it at that, okay? The building is a beautiful building, it's one of the best buildings I have ever been in. It is such a wonderful structure the way it was built, it has huge timbers that put it together, but it has drawbacks, okay? The only section that we can use is the bottom section. We shouldn't even have tours going up on the second and the third floor, which they do, and somehow we gotta put a halt to it, because it's not safe, okay? The inside of the second floor, third floor, and up to the little bit on the fourth level, which is sort of like a half floor, there's nothing there. The windows were put in, nothing was finished, we got the big beams holding everything up. We got one floor down. It is only a single thickness of 3/4 board that is there. And it's very in bad shape. Everything about it is in bad shape. Now, having said that, I'm not going to ask for any comments or anything like that because this building needs a ton of work, a lot of money, and it's like that movie they had called The Money Pit. It's not something we can get into easily, and we're not going to get near it in the near future. We're just going to end up using the bottom floor like we do right now.
Did-
That's it.
Can I make a comment on that?
No.
Well,
It leads to other comments, that's why.
okay.
Okay? Let's go on to number 3, discussion of the deer hunt.
How about the posts here? We got comments on that already. Never mind.
Matt, do you want to come up here?
Yeah.
The reason this deer hunt's on here is more, it should have been worded deer management and land management. And again, this is a workshop, and this is something that the community needs to be aware of how we're going to really grow this ourselves as the fort running it, and just to kind of let you guys know where we are, and maybe for some future planning and some ideas of how we're going to cultivate our land for all the animals here, for the ecosystem. You want to kind of give a synopsis?
Well, I think the synopsis of the deer hunt is more or less a little bit too early to project. We've already done a deer count that needs to be turned into the biologist, and the biologist will give his recommendations on how to go forward. One of the things I'd be interested in right now, this is the first time I've done this. Sammy, this is the second time that he's done this. Is there anybody that has anything that they'd like to share with us about your, whether it's your worries or anything about any questions about the hunt or anything that we may be able to answer for you or something? Does anybody have anything? Sir, yes, sir.
We live over in 32, and the weekend before the hunt started on the 4th, there was so much shooting over west of the highway that it was unbelievable the whole weekend.
That was on the shooting range?
No, this was not. I live close and I know when they're shooting. I know when the border patrol shoot. This was all kinds of rifles and shotguns going off.
Yes, sir. It wasn't nothing pertaining to the hunt that was on the 400 acres.
Was it poaching?
No, ma'am. It was just people sighting in their rifles and stuff like that. It was right before deer season starts up. It was people on the 400 acres.
What did we have this past weekend? Because I only heard 2 shots go off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday over there.
There was hunting this weekend over there on the 400 acres. It's staggered between the fort and the 400. One week it'll be on the fort, and the next week it'll be on the 400 acres. This weekend it'll be back on the fort, then it'll be staggered back and forth.
Okay, thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
By the way, I like that setup. I like the setup.
Oh,
We don't lose the fort every weekend. I think
yes,
that's
sir.
a good idea.
That was what we planned for. I just wanted to be sure that everybody was on the same page and stuff like that. And that's why I wanted to ask if y'all had any questions or anything like that on as far as yes, ma'am.
Matt, the voters won't really be back until a week or so from now, at least the president will be there. But, yeah, I think it would be good to make sure they know how this is going to work, so we don't have misinformation to them.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If we've got something printed, I'd like to make sure they get it the minute they get back on the board.
It's in the calendar.
Yes, ma'am.
I know, but you know, when you travel from Canada
Yeah.
or England, you don't always look at that.
Debbie.
Now, is it my understanding that there's no hunting left of Scales Road, that trail down on the left of Scales Road are always open?
The one that's going along the creek going down to the pro
On
shop?
the left.
Left.
On the left of Scales Road.
Left is
Down
Scales
Scales
Road.
Road,
If you go down Scales Road, it's on the left.
north of Scales.
The old soil plant site.
Even when you're hunting, those trails are always open.
Yeah, and behind Unit 3 and Unit 1, there's no hunting back there. If y'all, and this is another biggie, before I want to go into some other stuff, but this is another biggie. If y'all hear gunshots in areas anytime y'all hear that there's any gunshots or anything like that, or see something, it's very important to report it. No matter what it is, report it to us so we can go. It may be somebody poaching, you never know. But it's very important that we get that information. So if you see somebody out riding around, maybe suspicious, or somebody walking around, somebody, go ahead and give us a call. It won't hurt for us just to check it out and make sure everything's okay. I would like to elaborate on another thing. You asked me about the deer patterns. What we were seeing, or what Sammy had last year, on what the deer were doing last year, is a little bit different this year. And you never can tell whether it's a climate change or whatever, but they're not in the same areas that they were before. They've kind of moved. They've drifted away from the back and they've drifted up here in the front. So it makes it a little bit of it's hard to kind of deal with it when you're up around residences and stuff like that, but we kept it our best to try to keep things away from the residences as much as possible, and to make it as safe as possible. But definitely the deer patterns have changed a little bit, and we'll be talking to the biologist about that and seeing ways of maybe how we can try to get them back into the old pattern of where they were before. Does the board have any questions?
How many, when you did the deer count, how many did you count?
We're getting a lot more does than what we had bucks. And I don't know whether the climate had something to do that or not, but you know, you're talking, the game warden was with us one night, and I did the count with him the second night, but you're looking at 100+ does to maybe less than 20 bucks. But that's just your count. Until you give that to the biologist, he'll give you a deer to doe ratio, what he thinks, how many deer are on the fort and how many deer need to be taken, whether it's how many does or how many bucks. But there's definitely going to be more does that need to be taken than bucks. And that's on both sides. You have 2 herds up on the fort, so you really need to manage both those herds. But both the numbers that we got were similar, both in the whitetail and the axis deer. So, but we were not seeing the axis deer in the places we saw them last year or the years before. They've kind of moved back up, and they're keeping themselves up further near the residents now. They're not primarily like you used to see them back by the Red Bridge and stuff like that. You hardly ever see them down there anymore. So we're just going to have to try to deal with that the best we can.
They're up in 32.
Yeah, they're all around those units. Sammy, do you have anything to add?
Well, the only thing is, with residents feeding, they're gonna stay closer to the residential area.
That's right.
After you feed them, they'll go 20 yards up the road, bed down, and wait for the next meal to come out at 5 o'clock. What happens? Residents throw out corn, watermelons, whatever else, so they're just gonna come straight back. And it's a vicious cycle that you can't control.
But other than that, I think for the climate and what in October we're doing so far pretty good. So as some of these other ranchers, they haven't had too good in their hunting. So hopefully when it starts getting winter time, it gets a little bit colder and the foliage and stuff dies off, it'll be a lot better.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Would it pay us to set up some kind of feeding system out further away? Do we have a
well, that's one of our plans for later on, is to set up food plots and things like that to draw them away from the residential areas and get them back down into the food area.
And I will say, I talked to the game warden today. He's helping us. The information that goes to the biologists, they can put something together and they can come and speak to the board what the recommendations are and how to try to make things better on your management system. But it really would be a good idea to set up a management system for the fort for at least like a 5-year or something period of time to try to get things to where it needs to be.
Agreed.
Because your buck-doe ratio is really off right now.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Stay there.
Yes.
Stay there. The next topic is discussion is the recent rise of theft on the fort. And this has become a red letter situation, which I'll have Matt talk about in a minute. It's something that a lot of people I've associated with ever since I've been here. They've been under the secure feeling that they can leave their houses open, their windows not locked, their cars not locked, and everything else associated with non-security procedure. That is not so anymore. It's not just this little spurt right now, but unfortunately, the world has caught up with us in the way things go on that are on the bad side that we don't like to take and look at. So having said that, I'll let Matt give you an overview of what's been going on and how he's addressing it. Matt.
Well, let me start out by saying, out of some of the thefts and burglaries that have been going on, I don't want to speak bad about one certain group of individuals or anything like that, but what it more or less looks and what it more or less boils down to is that this was stuff that happened wasn't from people that lived off of the fort, it's people that live on the fort. And more or less looking like some people that are renters. I don't know what's legal to do at this point, but what I would like for y'all to look into, or Jody to look into, is that when somebody commits a crime on the fort and they are not a member of this fort, they don't need to come back to this fort. They don't need to be here.
Are you suggesting, Matt, that even if they're renters, see if we can take legal steps to say you're no longer allowed on the fort and talk to the landlord or stuff like that?
Yes, sir.
I agree.
And I happen to agree with that. I know it's a big, it's going to have to be checked in legally by our lawyers and stuff to see if we got that.
Yes, sir.
That power. And if we do, and it checks out that we do have that power, then I'm totally for it.
But out of your burglaries and your thefts and stuff right now, that's what it's looking, that's more or less who the culprits were, or who the culprits are, that are people that are actually living up here on the fort. That's what we're looking at right now. I'm not going to mention any names or where they live at or anything like that, but that's more or less what's going on. I would ask everybody that they need to be vigilant. When you see somebody out wandering around, I don't care whether it's daytime or night, you don't know what they're doing, give us a call. Nighttime, call us. We don't give out the names of anyone that calls and says report something. We're not going to give your name out to anybody. But we need to have that phone call when it's happening and let us come out and check it out. If there's a person that working there at the gate and they give you a problem or say something that isn't kosher to what you like, then I need to know about that. I need to know about that. They need to do what they're supposed to do, and they need to send somebody out there to check on it. Because if they don't, then it may be the next day that somebody goes, well, my house was broken into, I call it something like that. They need to go out there and they need to check. So please, give us a call whenever you see something that isn't right, suspicious, anything like that, call us so we can come and check on it. Be sure and lock your doors. People used to, they don't lock their doors to the vehicles, don't lock the doors to their houses, all this other stuff. Times have changed. You have a lot of renters here now. You've got people and you don't know who they are. You've got people, members, you don't know who they are. So, you just don't know anymore. But it's just to be better safe than sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason that that the membership is not being told about this? We have a weekly newsletter. Nobody ever hears about this. The city puts out a sheriff's report every week, so you know what's going on in the city. Nothing comes off of the fort. We have no idea what's going on here, and people aren't going to be looking for those things or aware of those things or know that they should lock their doors if they don't even know there's anything that's happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way we can put out a weekly report?
Yes, ma'am. In the past, I've given things to on the weekly newsletter that kind of states those areas, and it's went over and over, but I don't know what you try to call it, isn't something that is redundant or something, but it isn't in there enough or stressed enough that that's what you need to do to try to protect yourself and what you have. In one instance where one of these thefts happen, and this is another thing you need to look for. If you're getting contract work out, do not pay somebody up front. Because like she paid somebody up front, those people came to their house, looked at everything, they took the money, never saw them again. Then she got burglarized twice. So you need, and those people were up here on the floor. They live up here on the floor. The contractors that she had to work for. So you really got to watch what you're doing. And I just can't say enough. You really have to watch on what you're doing and stuff like that. But I'll try to do better to try to get y'all, put stuff in the newsletter to try to.
Are they being prosecuted? Are people prosecuting them or failing to do so?
Some of the stuff, there's one that got caught over here in Unit 15. That was like a member's grandson that stole from his grandmother. There's the other instance that hasn't even been dealt with yet, where over here about $5,000 worth of stuff was stolen out of a guy's house. And they're trying to dig up one of the cases that's going on right now. This other one over here, that was just instance, that was just a couple of $100 worth of stuff, but it doesn't make a difference whether it's that couple of $100 or whatever. It's still burglary. But
sure.
I think more or less you just have to call whenever you see something suspicious. A burglar, like if I'm driving down the road or somebody else in a security vehicle driving down the road, they can tell that vehicle. They know what it is. And a lot of times it's one or two people and one will be a lookout. And they'll say, well, this person's coming over here, so they'll go and hide, or they're not going to be standing out there with a red flag, you know. But if you see somebody lurking around in the dark or walking around that you aren't sure about, you give us a call and we'll check it out, see what they're doing. It's real hard to deal with people that are burglarizing and stuff and dealing with them at night, but usually in most cases, it's somebody right there within that neighborhood that's doing it. It isn't somebody that's coming from a far distance. So,
Matt, are you saying that we should organize something like a unit watch or like the neighborhood watch they have in the cities?
Yes, sir. Anything helpful.
I mean, each unit should have their own watches.
It would be helpful, and it would surely deter a lot of the thefts and burglaries that are going on. Anytime you start a group like that, just be sure and stress to them that just to call and not get involved, because we don't want anybody getting hurt. But it surely is it's a very positive and a very good tool to use to deter crime.
I'd say off the top of my head, it'd be better not to establish a group as in each segment. I think it would be much better if everybody was cognizant of the fact of what's going on, and they're the eyes and the ears that see something, and it's the individual that reports rather than the group.
Yes, sir.
And that'll cut down the time between what happens and what they get to you and how the response time is. As far as the other thing about letting everybody know, I think that we'll, from now on, incorporate a little segment that we post all of these things, not so much on the internet because not everybody has the internet, but somewhere like on the bulletin board, or we can even bring it up in our annual monthly meeting, that we cover all the high points, you know, in your report.
Yes, sir.
The reason I said unit watch is because people that live in each unit, whether it be 14, 15, 31, 32, they know, basically they have a real good idea who's lives in their neighborhood, and they would know if a stranger recognize a stranger quicker than the general public could afford.
Yes, sir. But it's a real good idea to put something like that and let people know that it's. But the main thing is for them to call and not be afraid to call. Don't be worried about, other things like we're going to use their name or something, because we're not.
Well, I'm not against the idea of posting it in our weekly newsletter that goes out, get everybody aware of it, because people do see that. I think that is one of the things we should do.
That's a good idea.
Does the fort have a list of all of the landlords that do the renting? And before they rent, shouldn't the fort require a background check?
We don't own that property.
We can't do that. We don't own the property.
Well, I know I have talked to the sheriff, and he said that it would alleviate a lot of problems they could get into prevention rather than intervention if they knew, had background checks.
Well, that's up to the
Or if they
landlord.
had a list of the people that were renting.
Understand, but that's up to the landlord. We don't own the property, so we can't do it.
The board
Debbie?
should have a list of the people that are renting.
Yeah.
They require.
I have a list that I normally give Matt of what properties they're in, who the owner of the property is, how many people are staying in the property. And when those people leave, I usually let Matt know those are gone and new ones have come in. And that's what's supposed to be done by anybody that has renters, whether it be an individual or a property manager.
Yeah, but that doesn't, we don't have the right to do a background check on them.
No, not as an individual, but the owners do, or whatever.
Yeah, they
I
do.
couldn't require the owner to have a background check.
Pardon? I would, I
How do
don't.
they get a sticker on their car? Couldn't
We-
you ask it before you give them a sticker for their car to
They
get
have
in
to
and
fill
out?
out paperwork before they can
I-
get a sticker in.
Before we took that step, I think should get rulings from our lawyer and make sure we don't wind up with any lawsuits. But that's a good idea.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, sir.
That's very informative.
Y'all have a nice day.
Yes, you too.
Now
And
you
it's
know
long.
you can go to bed.
Not yet.
It's now just about 7 o'clock. We're going to recess our executive session, where we shall return.